The Republican Party doesn't seem to understand that they helped create the conditions within their own party that allowed for the rise of Donald Trump. And now, as they attempt to get rid of him, they're finding out that their base actually believes the same things that he does. This has created a massive dilemma for the Republicans, and I have Howard Nations with me now to talk about this issue. Howard, the Republican Party right now, they're absolutely desperate. They're trying to figure out, how do we stop this Donald Trump monster? But they're no closer to an answer today than they were 6 months ago after the first Republican debate, where he came out as their front runner. So, what exactly are they thinking right now could happen with their party with Donald Trump at the helm?
I tell you what the guys with the money are thinking. What's missing? We're here at a very vital point in the nomination of a Republican nominee for presidency of the United States, and who's missing from the entire scenario? Rove, the Koch brothers, Adelson, the guys who have picked establishment candidates for decades. The establishment is missing. Why? Because I think they've done the same analysis we're about to do, and they don't see a pathway to victory, and so they're keeping their money out of it right now. The alternatives they're looking at: number one, Trump wins the nomination, gets 1,237 delegates. First, Bill Kristol, the editor of the Weekly Standard, a third-party establishment, very conservative leader, has promised that there will be an independent Republican run as a third-party candidate to correct what he terms the temporary mistake of nominating Trump. What he doesn't see, and they still miss the point, Trump's nomination is the direct result of the Republican nominating process, overwhelmingly. It's not a mistake. Trump is overwhelmingly the most popular Republican on the planet right now. So Kristol's attitude that this is a temporary mistake reflects the establishment's failure to see that they have a real problem on their hands.
I think what's very interesting is that the Republican establishment, they act like they don't understand where Trump came from, how this even happened. But look, I mean, this is the result of all of their policies over the last 20, 30 years. It's the result of Fox News. It's the result of the other hate talkers out there like Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh. This is what they've done to the base. This is the guy that core of Republican voters, this is who they want. This is where they want the party to go. And obviously, the big money interests, they've never been concerned about ideology. They never have. It's always been about, I have to throw money behind this guy because I'm going to get a good return on investment. The money guys, they don't care about birth control or health care or things of that nature. It's all about, what do I get out of this particular person? But now they're finding out the base voters, they don't care about what they get out of it. They want the guy that's going to allegedly, support their core values.
Right. Well, the second choice for the establishment, if they decide not to run an independent candidacy, is to write off the White House. They can nominate an establishment vice president. They can focus their funds on local Senate and House races. The biggest danger to the Republicans of a Trump nomination is the down ballot losses of the United States Senate and local races and governorships and positions such as that across the entire country. The third thing they can do, and this is a possibility, they can decide that if Trump gets the nomination, that they negotiate a deal with Trump. He is a dealer. They can agree to share power. They handpick the vice president. He agrees to clean up his act and push hard for down ballot support. Now, that's if he wins the nomination. Now, the second alternative is if Trump just wins a plurality. He goes in with less than 1,237 votes. The establishment choice would then be to deny him the nomination, which I think they will do. They could nominate Romney as their candidate, which is the reason I think he came forward recently. They could nominate Kasich as their vice president. in which case the Rove money that we haven't seen so far comes back into the general election big time. The Koch brothers come back in, especially into local elections, and they rely on the anti-Hillary vote to carry them through. Now, there's all the talk about the revolt in the party if that occurs, but how big is the revolt? Trump voters are 1/3 of the Republican voters, the third that vote in primaries. Only 1/3 of Republicans vote in primaries. Trump has 40% of that 1/3, or 13% of Republican general election voters. Would the loss of 13% really fracture the party for one election term? No. So this all comes back to what they can do, and can they take it away? The methodology in the Republican Party is the delegates are chosen by the state party conventions, the central committees, the executive committees. In other words, the delegates are chosen by the establishment. The candidate has no input into the establishment, into the delegate choices. Most states rule that delegates bound to the winner for just the first ballot only, but they're not bound for rules. They're not bound for credentials. They're not bound for vice presidential nominations. So the establishment can still, at convention, change the rules. The establishment can pick a vice president. The establishment can deny credentials to Trump the same way they deny the voting rights to minorities. They can control everything from the second ballot right on down. And so they have the opportunity from the second ballot, they get past that first ballot, they have the opportunity to name a candidate and a vice president, which I think would probably at this point be Romney and Kasich.
Well, it is really interesting because a lot of people don't fully know exactly how these conventions work, what are the rules for the party and things of that nature. In fact, we had a great question come in this past weekend asking us if there was any way that a party could, rule out a certain candidate based on conduct or any kind of ethics violation. But when it comes down to it, the party really does have the power to pick whoever they want to run for president. The primaries and the caucuses are really just a formality. It is what's the word I'm looking for? It's more of a, platitude extended towards the voters. The parties don't have to do that. They could just hold a convention, nominate who they want. And likewise, anybody running as an independent in most states, all you have to do is get a certain number of signatures, turn it in, and you get your name on the ballot for president. Yep. So all of this is really just a formality. I mean, this isn't a hard set of rules that either party has to follow. It's rules that they made up that they can change at any point, when something starts to look a little screwy like it is with Donald Trump. So the Republican Party is absolutely not stuck with Trump, but in order to, stave off this 13% revolt, which could cost them, this one election, it's not going to destroy the party, but we haven't had a presidential election decided by fewer than 13 points in a long time. So this could, they are stuck with Trump, but at the same time, they're not. So they're at a very tough spot, but again, they put themselves in this spot.
They did, and Trump has the option at any time that he can run a third-party candidacy, and he would do well with it. If he splits the party short term, he guarantees Hillary's election. But their down ballot vulnerability is what they have to worry about.
Right.
They control the Senate by 4 seats, but they have a number of seats up this time. They have a House is solid until 2022 because of their successful gerrymandering. But they have governorships that are vulnerable. They have Secretary of State positions, which is how they manage to control voting and deny voting to minorities in the country. That's done through Secretary of State. Some of those are appointed, some of those are elected. Those are down ballot. The Koch brothers, which has accumulated $800 million this year for this year's election, has not appeared, but they're holding their money back for down ballot elections. They're staying out of this current fight. Adelson and Rove, nowhere to be seen, millions of dollars in waiting. because I think they are doing the same thing. They look at this and don't see a way for an establishment candidate to win at this point. The most likely scenario, I think, is that Trump wins the majority. The establishment denies him the nomination, which puts the election in Trump's hands because he can split the party and effectively elect Hillary. And this, as you say, is a flawed thinking by the establishment. They vastly underestimated the discontent of Republican voters, whom they've lied to for years regarding the economy, jobs, small government, trade agreements, taxes, controlling Wall Street. And Trump has tapped into the anger regarding declining wages, unemployment, white rage, immigrants taking jobs, Congress doing nothing and even failing at that. The Republican Congress, which says no to everything, also means that they say no to solutions for the white working class American voters. So Trump's just saying out loud what they've been feeling for years. The fundamental problem is the Republicans, there's enough outraged Republicans to control the primaries, but not enough to win a general election.
Right. And as you've pointed out here, I think the party establishment, the party leaders themselves, they are willing to concede this White House race as long as they can protect the Senate. They're going to protect the House and the governorships and the secretaries of state. I mean, those are the ones. I mean, just look at what's happened with Obama right now with Scalia's vacancy. Yeah. Had this been a normal time in American politics, we would already have a replacement probably. But instead, we can't even get a real nominee yet because we know that they're not going to work. And that is what a Republican-controlled Senate will do if Hillary Clinton wins or if something happens and Bernie Sanders wins. But I don't think that the establishment is willing to do anything that's going to cost them those down-ballot races because that is their bread and butter. It's what keeps, minorities away from the polls. It's what keeps the industry, operating and feeding them money. And so those House and Senate and governorships, that's where the big money is going to start flowing once this presidential race kind of cools down and we see who the nominees are. Howard, we are out of time, but this is an important issue, and it's something that obviously we're going to have to stay on top of until November. So thank you very much.
My pleasure, Farron.